The CEO of a billion-dollar business is in damage control after his affair with a colleague was exposed, of all places, on Kiss Cam.
For years, one man stayed in the shadows, watching it all unfold from behind tinted glass while Andy Byron skyrocketed through the tech world. He went from a hungry startup dreamer to building a billion-dollar empire, and then facing storms most couldn't survive, all by the age of 34. But this wasn't just any witness. This was the man driving Byron into those high-stakes boardrooms, those midnight strategy sessions, and yes, to that now infamous Coldplay concert that changed everything. And now he's finally ready to break his silence. No half-baked rumors, no sources say nonsense, just the raw, unfiltered truth of what he saw with his own eyes. This isn't about judgment, he insists. It's about context and truth. Because when you're the one behind the wheel, you see everything. The deals, the whispers, the cracks in the armor, long before the headlines ever hit. Before his name became clickbait gold, Andy Byron was tech royalty in the making, the quiet but commanding force in every room. He didn't need flashy PR stunts or overhyped social media feeds. He let results do the talking, and the results were undeniable. As CEO and co-founder of Astronomer, Byron built a fast-growing data orchestration powerhouse, the unseen machine keeping the world's biggest corporations running smoothly. Astronomer was the silent giant powering massive data pipelines for global heavyweights. And under Byron's ruthless precision, it didn't just grow, it exploded. Within a few short years, the company hit unicorn status, breaking the billion-dollar mark with ease. Inside the walls of Astronomer, Byron had a reputation: laser-focused meetings, decisive calls, and standards so high they made grown executives sweat. Andy Byron's leadership was all about quiet control, the kind that didn't need shouting to make people fall in line. Former employees say he could flip the mood of an entire room with just a single look, or a perfectly timed silence that left everyone holding their breath.
Coldplay hasn't made a single in years, and now they just made 2 last night.
He wasn't the CEO chasing Instagram likes or headline quotes. He chased wins, and he got them, no matter what it took. In public, Byron kept the same disciplined, almost untouchable image. You wouldn't catch him stumbling out of a club or posting half-baked rants online. His photos were almost exclusively in boardrooms, tech conferences, or shaking hands at investor dinners. And when he did speak publicly, it was all about innovation, scaling data, and crafting the perfect team culture. To the media, he looked like a living, breathing Silicon Valley blueprint, self-made, sharp, and impossible to knock off balance. Behind that cool, controlled image, Byron played up the family man card just enough to keep it believable. Mentions of his wife Megan popped up in early Astronomer blog posts and fundraising announcements. Colleagues would casually tell stories about him skipping late-night networking events to make it home for dinner. And those glossy charity gala photos of the two of them, they sealed the deal on his wholesome public profile. This mix of high-octane business wins and polished family image made Byron one of tech's most respected and most mysterious figures. He didn't talk much, but his numbers screamed success. By the time Astronomer smashed through the billion-dollar mark, it looked like Byron's throne was untouchable, though until something happened that shattered the illusion. His driver, the man nobody knew, yet who knew everything. He wasn't built for the spotlight. In fact, his entire career was about avoiding it.
He was hired just 8 months ago, and now that 15 seconds of video is having a devastating impact on both of their lives.
At 34 years old, he'd spent years as the silent shadow behind powerful executives, making sure they got where they needed to be, on time, in style, and without the world ever knowing what happened in between. Hired through a third-party travel service Astronomer had on retainer, his job was crystal clear: get the client to their destination fast, smooth, and discreet, and above all, keep your mouth shut. He started driving Byron in his late 20s, right as the CEO's rise was kicking into overdrive. The schedule was punishing: meetings in multiple cities, red-eye flights, marathon investor pitches. But for the driver, confidentiality came first. This wasn't some movie-style chauffeur cracking jokes in the front seat. He didn't speak unless spoken to. He'd signed stacks of NDAs, been drilled on privacy protocols, and took pride in disappearing into the background. His role wasn't just transportation, it was protecting a client's time, image, and secrets. So why talk now? For years, he kept the doors and his mouth closed. Even when the rumor mill was spinning like crazy, he stayed silent. People think it's easy to speak, he'd later say, but when your whole paycheck depends on discretion, it's not so simple. But that all changed after Astronomer's corporate shakeup. Several long-standing service contracts, his included, got cut. And with those cuts came a legal shift. The NDAs tied to his role quietly expired. For the first time in years, he could speak without risking his career. Still, he wrestled with the decision for months. Not because he wanted to ruin anyone, but because what he'd seen didn't line up with the spotless public image the world believed. And now, he's speaking with sharp precision, not for revenge, but in his words, to set the record straight. His version of Andy Byron wasn't the one plastered across press releases or billion-dollar valuation celebrations. It was the one seen only from the driver's seat. For nearly 5 years, the view never changed. Byron's life was run like a military operation. Fast, tight, perfectly timed. The driver remembers those mornings clearly. A silent pickup at the same sleek downtown apartment building. From there, the destinations ranged from tech campuses and private offices to luxury hotel cafes where deals were sealed over single espressos. The days rolled into leadership retreats, high-powered investor dinners, and sometimes 2, even 3 flights before the sun came up again. Byron looked calm on the outside, never flustered, never rushed. Every movement was intentional, his voice low and deliberate. But behind the calm, the driver saw something else, a controlled intensity that seeped into everything. From the exact seat he wanted in the car to the precise moment the AC had to be switched on before he stepped inside. Nothing was left to chance. But then the patterns started. Strange patterns. At first, it was the occasional last-minute pickup from an unlisted location, rare enough to brush off. Then they came more often, once every few weeks. Then almost every week, Byron would slide into the back seat without a word, glued to his phone, and halfway through the ride, change the destination entirely. No explanations, no need for them. The destinations themselves weren't what raised eyebrows. It was the tone of the phone calls during those rides. Some were short, cold, and strictly business. Others carried a quiet bite of personal frustration. Byron never raised his voice. Instead, he spoke in a low, deliberate whisper, leaning toward the glass, his words too faint to catch, but heavy enough to feel. Unlike other ex the driver had chauffeured, Byron wasn't one for weather talk, weekend jokes, or casual chatter. Every word was calculated, about timing, routes, and efficiency. If the driver messed up, Byron addressed it politely, but with a firmness that didn't invite mistakes twice. One memory stayed burned in the driver's mind. A late-night board meeting had dragged on longer than expected. Byron slid into the back seat, looking worn out, loosened his tie, exhaled, and muttered under his breath, "They don't understand the pressure." Then silence. For the entire 40-minute ride, he stared out the window, lost in thought. That moment gave the driver a rare glimpse of the strain beneath the armor. A flash of the man under the CEO mask, but those moments were rare. Most days, it was back to the same rhythm. Rigid schedules, minimal conversation, and an iron grip on control. Byron was always in motion, always calculating, always 3 steps ahead. The driver never pried, never asked. That wasn't the job. The job was to vanish into the background. Still, silence has a way of talking if you listen long enough. Patterns emerge. Behaviors repeat. Details start connecting in ways outsiders would never notice. As the driver put it, "I don't know everything, but I know what I saw. And what I saw didn't always match the public image." That was when the curtain started to lift. And here's the thing, truth doesn't always crash in with a headline or an explosive scandal. Sometimes it creeps in from the quietest corner, the back seat. The signs were subtle at first, but by early 2025, ignoring them became impossible. The usually cool, controlled Andy Byron began to shift in ways too small for most to clock, but crystal clear to someone who'd been behind the wheel for years. The man who once rode in near silence now spent almost every drive glued to his phone. His voice had an edge now. Calls were sharper, more urgent. Some sounded like tight negotiations, others like tense damage control. He started asking to stop mid-ride, stepping out to take private calls, pacing the sidewalk with one hand over his face. The driver also picked up on a theme running through Byron's muttered complaints, trust issues, loyalty tests, fears about sensitive intel landing in the wrong hands. And yet, his phone stayed in his grip, screen glowing. No outgoing calls being made. Something was brewing, and it was only getting louder. He didn't call anyone. He didn't answer anything. He just kept scrolling to refreshing his socials over and over like he was chasing something he couldn't outrun. The driver noticed every flick of the thumb. Instagram, then X back to Instagram, hashtags, comments, tagged photos, back and forth. Each refresh, his face grew darker. At one point, Byron muttered under his breath, almost to himself, "They're faster than I thought." The rest of that ride was dead silent, no music, no words, just tension. Then came the shock. Exactly 4:37 a.m., the driver's phone lit up. It was Byron. No explanation, no pleasantries, just be outside in 15 minutes. When the driver pulled up, Byron was already there, standing on the curb in the same clothes from the night before, phone pressed tight to his ear. He slid into the back seat mid-conversation, speaking fast and low. Fragments spilled out. They can't use it without my consent. We were in a public place, but still. Tell legal to send the draft to both of them by noon. He was clearly talking to his lawyers. No mention of the concert, no mention of the blurry photos now blowing up online. Photos showing him and Kristen in the VIP section, faces far too recognizable to deny. Someone had tagged them both. Comments were swirling, some were speculating, others claimed they already knew. By the time they reached the office, Byron's hands were shaking. He turned to the driver and said something he had never said before. "You didn't see me last night, you just picked me up this morning." Then, without waiting for a reply, he stepped out, walked through the revolving doors, and vanished. But the story was already moving faster than him. Within 24 hours of the Coldplay concert, a video hit the internet. At first, it looked like just another fan clip. Then someone slowed it down, zoomed in, circled a face, and added the words, "Is that Andy Byron on the Kiss Cam?" That's all it took. The clip spread like wildfire. It showed a man who looked exactly like Andy Byron standing beside a blonde woman in VIP. The camera panned, the crowd cheered, the woman leaned in. A moment so quick you could miss it, but the message was crystal clear. Tags exploded, his name flooded every comment section, Kristen's name got dragged into it, speculation turned into confirmation overnight. And the driver, he watched the fallout in real time. Over the next 5 days, Byron had him drive to the same sleek glass tower downtown, home to one of Boston's most elite law firms. 3 visits, each the same. Byron stepped out fast, barely spoke, sometimes carrying a phone, sometimes a folder, sometimes nothing, but always glancing over his shoulder. Meanwhile, online chaos was peaking. Hashtags trended. Reddit threads analyzed the video frame by frame. Instagram users dug up old photos of Byron and Kristen at events, charity dinners, even casual group shots. Every image got picked apart. Gossip blogs pumped out story after story. Then real industry insiders began leaking whispers, old company tensions, loyalty questions, strange power shifts. This wasn't just a corporate storm, it was personal. The first clear sign? Meghan Carey, Byron's wife of nearly 10 years, never stepped into the car again. Before the concert, she'd often join him for events, galas, even sit in the front chatting with the driver. But after that night, gone. Inside the car, Byron's panic morphed into something colder. No more raised voice, just clipped replies. AirPods in, eyes locked on the window. All his old routines, the coffee stops, the dry cleaning runs, the gym pickups, vanished. He moved like a man expecting another hit at any second. By the 5th day, the silence felt permanent. One night, after a late drop-off, Byron didn't move when they stopped. The engine was off, but he just sat there in the back. His phone lit up every few seconds, messages pouring in. He stared at the screen, not moving, not answering. Minutes passed before he finally spoke. His voice was flat. "This isn't going to end clean, none of it." And he was right. The day he resigned, the air was strange, not tense, empty. Byron stepped into the car holding a dark gray suit and a leather folder stamped private, board only. He didn't say a word. The drive to the board meeting was silent, no music, no calls. He stared out the window, face unreadable. The building was discreet. No signs, no fanfare, just tinted glass and heavy security. He told the driver to wait. Over an hour later, he returned. But something in him had shifted. His shoulders, once squared with confidence, now slumped forward. His skin was pale, his expression hollow. This wasn't a ride back to the office. He asked for his private residence, a place he hadn't mentioned in weeks. The house was in a gated, quiet neighborhood. It used to be full of life. Today, it was silent. Byron stepped out, looked at the driver, and said only, "That'll be all. No goodbye, no thank you. Just gone." It was the last time the driver ever saw him. At first, he thought he'd never speak of it. Even with the headlines blazing, the NDA still in place, and a kind of sympathy for a man who'd lost everything in real time. His marriage, his company, his image. But weeks later, the NDA expired. Astronomer had new leadership, and the driver realized there was more to the story than the public knew. Not just the scandal, but the slow, brutal unraveling underneath it, the pressure that cracked the edges, the moments when Byron looked like he couldn't breathe. He doesn't expect applause, and he's not chasing outrage. He just wants the truth out there, the real truth. Because this wasn't just a fall from grace. It was a man trapped in a storm he helped create, a storm he couldn't escape. and someone had to bear witness. So, what would you have done in the driver's place? Drop your thoughts below, smash that like button, subscribe for more stories the media won't tell you, share this with someone who loves the inside scoop, and I'll see you in the next one.